Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're doing It's Armageddon. So, what if the world is ending? Who knows? Nuclear war, some catastrophe is happening, and you only have enough time to grab 3 episodes from each season of Tom Baker's Doctor Who run. So, basically half of Tom Baker's stories, 21 out of 42. But instead of just saying half of his stories, because it would be way too Hinchcliffe heavy, let's be honest. Excuse me. Let's say you could pick 3 from each of his seasons, because most of his seasons are 6 stories. So you get a little over half in season 12, a little under half in season 18, which really turned around to bite me in the rear when I got to season 18. We'll get to that. As you're trying to carry water bottles and like canned food down, you're also trying to balance Doctor Who stuff. Which 3 Tom Baker stories from each season would you save and why? Season 12! Of course, I have to pick the 2 classics, The Ark in Space and Genesis. I love The Ark in Space. I have a childhood nostalgic attachment to it, plus it's just a good story. I'd save Genesis because it's Genesis. I mean, you have to save Genesis because it's Genesis. I shouldn't have to explain that one. And then I would say Robot. It gets a little tricky because I love season 12 so much, but I do have just such a strong personal love for Robot. I've talked about that before on the channel. I love Robot. It's one of my favorite Doctor Who stories to go back and rewatch, even if the robot looks a little silly and some of the effects are silly. It's just a fun little post-Pertwee story, and I love it. And Tom Baker is just fully the 4th Doctor from the get-go. I mean, even in his very first story, he is the 4th Doctor. He really just gets this character right out of the gate. Season 13 was a little trickier because there's just, you have so many classics in season 13 that it really is hard to pick. Now, I knew my first 2 would be, of course, Pyramids of Mars, which I did get to rewatch recently, and I love Pyramids of Mars. It is, I think, objectively one of the best 4th Doctor stories, and definitely always a fun one to rewatch with one of the best, if not the best, one-off villain we've ever had in Doctor Who with Sutekh, who's just phenomenal in this. Gabriel Wolf does a great job playing Sutekh, and Bob Holmes, because let's admit it's mostly Bob Holmes writing it here, did a great job with the script. And the next one, of course, my sinuses are acting up today, is The Seeds of Doom, which is a phenomenal finale. And once again, I love just everything about this story. I love Tom Baker in it. I love Elizabeth Sladen in it. I love the guest cast in this. They're all really good. With the guy playing Chase being a little over the top without it feeling overly campy. It's just the right level of over the top to let you know he's a little bonkers, and gets more so as the story progresses. The first 2 episodes or so really have, you know, John Carpenter's The Thing vibes going on. Even though this predates it, it really does feel a lot like that movie. And then the latter 2/3 taking place in the mansion being really well done. I love the guy playing Scorby. He's so good. You love to hate Scorby. And the fact that the actor gets that across so well, I love that performance. And you get to see Tom be very physical in this story. You know, he even uses a gun at one point. Not uses it, but, you know, has it in his hand because they don't know he won't use it. What do you do for an encore, Doctor? I win. Tom Baker gets some really clever dialogue in this, which I really like. And I love that bit when Scorby's like, all right, Doctor, turn around slowly, and he just spins in a full 360. I love how snarky and smart alecky the 4th Doctor is in Seeds of Doom. It's such a good story. Such a fun watch. The 3rd one was a little harder for me, but I did go with Planet of Evil. I like Planet of Evil. I like every story this season. I think the weakest is, of course, Android Invasion, but it's still really good. Brains of Morbius is always really fun, and Terror of the Zygons is, of course, really good. But there's just something about Planet of Evil I really like. I mean, part of it is that immaculate jungle set, which is so well made. I mean, that's one of the hats off I've got to give to the set design for Classic Who. That is, I think, one of the best sets Classic Who ever did was that jungle. It looks so good. To be that detailed, to even have like water and ponds and stuff in it. It's just really well built. I love the special effects in it. I mean, you could touch them up, but I think they look good. The little id-looking creature, you know, I love the Jekyll and Hyde thing going on. I just really like Planet of Evil a lot. A good story and a really strong season. Season 14, this one's a little harder because I think season 14 is a bit overrated while still being really good. For me, the only true masterpiece of season 14 is probably Talons, which I do think is Tom Baker's best series finale or season finale. I love the Talons of Wing Chiang. Again, it's Bob Holmes being absolutely amazing. It's an almost perfect story. I mean, there's a couple of the effects like the rat that haven't aged well. I like the CGI rat. It's still not perfect, but it's an improvement. I love the guest cast in this story. Tom Baker is great in this story. I love his kind of Sherlock Holmes outfit. I love the location filming, the set design, Jago and Lightfoot. Leela is great in it. I love Talons. There's a reason why Talons consistently makes like top 10 Doctor Who list. It earns it. It's just a well-written, well-shot, well-executed story. The next one on the list for me would be The Face of Evil. That's probably my second favorite of the season. I think it's one of 70s Doctor Who's most underrated stories. It's a great introduction to Leela. Chris did a really good job with it. I might not be as enthralled with Robots of Death like some people are, but Chris did such a good job with Face of Evil. Leela's such a good companion. She's one of my favorites. She is one of my favorite companions. I love Leela. And I love having like a non-modern day Earth companion, which is something the modern show desperately needs. And just the explanation of the story is another instance of the Doctor thinking he was doing something good to help people out, and then not sticking around to see what happens and finding out, you know, when he's like, I thought I was helping them. I love kind of when the Doctor's good intentions kind of bite him in the ass. Much like with The Long Game and the Bad Wolf two-parter in Modern Who. You kind of see that here. I love the special effects, too, of the computer when it has, like, Tom Baker's face. It's a pretty neat special effect for the 70s. I like Face of Evil. It's not perfect. The actual model shot of the face on the mountain it looks like a model shot. But it's a really good story. Really good story. And for the third one, I did pick Robots of Death. It's not my favorite. I mean, I actually probably prefer watching Mask of Mandragora, honestly. I like that one. I also think it's underrated. But I'm not the biggest fan of Deadly Assassin, as I've talked about before, just because of its wider implications to Doctor Who lore. And Hand of Fear has 3 really good episodes, and then the 4th episode, it kind of falls apart, even though it redeems itself a little with its finale, which is really good. Its ending. But Robots of Death, I put on here more, again, as I mentioned before, while the script doesn't really grab me, I do love a lot of the design choices. I love the robot designs. I love the interior designs of the ship, how instead of looking like industrial blue collar, like, say, the Nostromo in Alien, it's more, these people are doing a hard job, but it looks like they're living in luxury on, like, this Renaissance ship or something. They look like they're rich passengers instead of employees, the way they're dressed and everything. I love those design choices, and that's, I think, the reason why I would keep season 14, or keep Robots of Death in season 14. Season 15, Horror Fang Rock. Gotta be Horror Fang Rock right off the bat. It is the masterpiece of the season. I love Horror Fang Rock. I know Ham will back me on this 100%. Just a phenomenally good story. Doctor Who doing horror right. I think the closest thing I could think of for Modern Who doing something like Horror Fang Rock would probably be Midnight, which is also a great story in its own right. I just love Horror Fang Rock. I've talked about it enough on the channel. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but it is one of Tom Baker's best. For me, it's also The Sunmakers. I think it's an underrated story. I like seeing Robert Holmes kind of do a non-horror influenced story here. And I love the pot shots he's taking at the tax man, because, I mean, who can't relate to that, feeling like, you know, the government's just stealing your money? I feel like that all the time, especially when they use it to build things I don't want, like more traffic lights. I hate traffic lights, especially in places where you don't need them. But I like it. I think it's a good little story. Not necessarily essential Doctor Who, but I always find it a fun rewatch. It's, it really is a satire on taxes. It's taxes taken to the extreme, which sometimes feels like real life, but very much the extreme. It's a great little satire piece. And Tom Baker and Leela are just great in it. And the third one I would say is probably Image of the Fendal. I need to give that one a rewatch, but I do love the horror elements for it and very much enjoyed the one time I've seen it. Season 16, the first two I knew right off the bat, Boss Operation and Pirate Planet. I love both those stories. Well, I mean, we have one by Robert Holmes and one by Douglas Adams, two of my favorite Doctor Who writers. And they're just both great. Again, I've talked about these stories in detail before. Most of you guys know they're easily my two favorite stories of season 16. Matter of fact, I'm ranking all of Doctor Who right now, and season 16 was higher than I expected it to be, and it's mostly based on the strength of these two stories. Just because I love them. They're the two of Tom Baker's stories I go back to rewatch the most. And then for the third one, I picked the Armageddon Factor. I think it's underrated. Now, I also enjoy Stones of Blood, and I like Androids of Terra. Most of you know I don't care for Prowl. Y'all knew that wasn't going to make the list. But I do think the Armageddon Factor is an underrated story. Some of the effects might let it down a little bit. It could use some updated effects. And the guy playing the Shadow is kind of hamming up the role a bit, and Drax was unnecessary, and K9 being reprogrammed was unnecessary. But if you strip away the flaws of the story, then it's actually pretty enjoyable. I like some of the concepts and ideas going on here. I like the Doctor building a time loop that is slowly stretching out, kind of a reverse Eve of the Daleks. I like that. I enjoy that. And I like the guy playing kind of the general with the gray hair, the one's kind of being controlled. I think the actor playing him does a really good job. So yeah, I enjoy it. Not the best Doctor Who, but underrated for sure. Season 17, City of Death, of course. You guys know it's my favorite Doctor Who story. And I think most people would agree it's the strongest story of season 17. I mean, you have to save City of Death. I think if most people could only save one story from season 17, it'd probably be City of Death. And then Shada. I know Shada is not complete in its original form. It's animated. It was never originally complete, but even though it's half animated, I love Shada. I think, once again, it's Douglas Adams. I find it extremely clever, extremely witty. I love the location work. The fact that is all on film, so it looks good in HD. The animation is really good. You have most of the original cast back. And I think it's just a fun, clever, intelligent, witty story. So I would save Shada. And then for the third one, probably Destiny. I mean, I like all of season 17. I do. It's a massively underrated season. But I like, despite Destiny's limited budget and the Davros mask not fitting properly and Davros's voice not being modulated properly in the original release, I like that they fixed that on the season 17 box set. I still find it a fun rewatch. I actually rewatched Destiny a lot. Again, there's some poor choices. The Movellans look silly. The actors playing them are fine. I have nothing against any of the actors playing them. I have some of the refugee actors who die really oddly or kind of funny. I'm going to get shot just slowly later. But the Movellans are good in it. Their acting's fine. The fact that Movellans have such a weakness, you just grab their little control unit, it's a little silly. But it's fun. I don't know why I find it as rewatchable as I do. But I do. And we don't get many Tom Baker's Dalek stories, so I'd have to save that. And then for season 18, this one was hard because there's 4 of them I want to save, and I can only save 3. I knew I was going to be saving State of Decay. Most of you guys know I love State of Decay. It is the masterpiece of season 18 for me. It really does have that Hinchcliffe-era horror feel to it, which is, of course, when it was originally written. And I think it does most of what it's trying to do very effectively. There are a couple special effects that are dodgy in it, especially the slaying of the great vampire, very dodgy. Although the effect of the 3 dying, the way the 3 die is really good, really, really good. I liked it. I just think it's a good story. I really like it. Love State of Decay. Keeper of Traken. I like Keeper of Traken a lot. I think it's Anthony Ainley's best performance. I find it interesting that my favorite Anthony Ainley performance is not the Master, but it's Tremas. I love how he plays Tremas, because he plays him as this intelligent, wise, but also kind man, and a good father. So it makes it all more tragic with his eventual fate. I just think he does such a good job playing him here. I just like the story. Tom Baker really seems to me like he was into the story. I think him and Adric have some great dialogue here. I tend to like Adric with 4, to be honest. I don't really like him with 5, but I like him with 4. The bit when they're talking, well, this said this happened, yes, and then this says it didn't happen, yes, and then this says it did happen here, and, well, yes, well, it doesn't make any sense. Oh, I like when he's like, well, sometimes I'm just, what you say doesn't make any sense. Oh, you noticed that, did you? I love that's a little funny scene for me, and I enjoy that. I don't know, I like the Keeper of Traken, I think, more than most do, and I think it's a great way to bring the Master back into the fold as well. Now, the hard part for me was the last 2, because I knew, and it's the only time I had to scratch something out when I was making the list, because I wrote down Warrior's Gate, because I like Warrior's Gate. I think Warrior's Gate is great. It's a great story. It's some great ideas and concepts in it, and I think it's executed really well on the screen. But then, you need Legopolis because it is the regeneration story. I think Warrior's Gate is a better story than Legopolis. But I think Legopolis is a more essential story because it is a regeneration story. And I do think the regeneration itself is done really well, even if I think Tom deserved a better regeneration story. It's not the worst regeneration story. It's just kind of in the middle of the group of regeneration stories. So I went with Legopolis more on its historical value and the fact that regeneration itself is good, even though I wanted to include Warrior's Gate because I do think it's overall the better story. But I did say State of Decay, Keeper of Traken, and Legopolis would be my 3. So, I'd like to know what you think of my list and which 3 from each season you would pick and why. So comment down below and let me know. Other things to do, click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I also have a Patreon. That helps me keep the bills paid. If you are interested in supporting me on that, there is a link to that down in the description below. I want to give a shout out to Thomas Simpson, who joined recently. I appreciate his support. I also want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons, Perkins, Stephen Crane, and Colin Coney. I appreciate their continued support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you would like to send me to look at and review, and there is a link to my Amazon wish list as well. All of that down in the description, so check that out if you would. Most importantly, though, thank you for watching.